Run, Hide, Fight is a new action thriller coming to us from the company The Daily Wire, which is co-founded by Ben Shapiro. And if you know anything about Ben Shapiro, then you know exactly what The Daily Wire is all about, and why I wasn't really looking forward to this movie because of it. This movie is basically Die Hard, but in a school shooting. You have a group of terrorist school shooters busting in a cafeteria, they've got hostages, they're shooting kids in camera left and right, and you've got one who's in charge of everyone, and he's got a interesting kind of attitude about him. Like he's got this dark edgelord kind of performance as he commands a scene, and there's only one kid, not adult, one kid who is able to stop them. It is literally Die Hard in a school shooting, and if John McClane wasn't the main character, it was like his daughter. There's an article going around about this movie that talks about how like a couple people behind this movie are basically enabled abusers, or they're enabling an abuser who produced this movie, who is also convicted of a sex crime against a 16-year-old. And when you think about what this movie is, a school shooting movie, school, emphasis on school because there's kids there, and there's a lot of kid extras, makes you really uncomfortable knowing that. I feel like that would make anyone feel really uncomfortable, you know, so I highly recommend you reading that. It also gave some insight where when the Daily Wire announced they were releasing this movie, apparently, according to the article, one of the ADs was like, when I found out that's the company that was going to distribute it, I had never wanted to take my name off of a project more, you know, which I find really funny. It makes me question, like, why you would even want your name on this to begin with, because the Daily Wire didn't make this was something else, but the Daily Wire is the one who's ultimately releasing it, you know. Nothing changed about the movie you made, but, you know, I just find it funny that now is when you wanted to take it off instead of before, but I get it, you know, work is hard to find. But ultimately, I was really not looking forward to this movie because I'm not a fan of Ben Shapiro, and I wasn't a fan of how he was talking this movie up as, this is a left versus right issue, leftists are gonna hate this movie because it's insensitive or not trying to be woke, you know, this is good conservative content, and if you don't like this movie, then you're against good conservative content. Where's our representation? So if you're a fan of Ben Shapiro, if you find yourself agreeing with him, or if you like this movie and you're really defensive about it, then maybe click off the video. You're probably not going to like what I have to say about this movie. I will say that I am really upset that this movie has been turned into a left versus right thing, because really the argument should just be, are you sure about watching it? Like, do you feel okay watching this, since this is ultimately sensationalizing event that has horrified millions of students and adults who either have lived through school shootings or are in constant fear of one. And if that is the case, then okay, that's the end of the discussion. Like, either you're okay to watch a movie like this, you want to watch a movie like this, or you don't. And there's no need to be upset or pissy about it at all. But of course, as soon as people try to bring up, I don't really know how to feel about this premise, it seems really insensitive. You have people going, "You snowflake, you libtard." So basically all you're gonna do is just leave like a nasty comment in the comments below, and you're just gonna look really foolish. Because I already told you you're not gonna like what I have to say, so you might as well just click off. So anyone who comments anything like "you libtard, snowflake, piece of shit," I'm just probably gonna link this part of the video to you. Anyways, let's talk about this horrible film. It's horrible. The movie opens up with the murder of a deer, which according to the article that I mentioned, was a real deer. They shot it and they filmed it, and then they froze it so they could bring it out later so the actors could come up and react to it. Which makes me really sick, because then our lead character who just shot the deer is like, you being talked to by your dad, Thomas Jane, like, "You're gonna want to do this, delegate," or something like that, and she just comes in with a rock and smashes it in the head with it, which, knowing that that was a real deer, makes me really upset. And as soon as it happened, I was like, oh, this main character is an asshole, just automatically. And I know that was premature to say, because it was like, you know, they're setting up like a darker character, a darker lead character who has an arc to go through. This is just the setup. But honestly, if I'm being for real, it did not get much better with her, because in the next scene, she's imagining her dead mom who died of cancer talking with her. It's one of those things. And when they immediately showed her, I recognized like the little cloth over her head. I was like, oh, this is like, she's really upset that her mom passed away. Maybe she's upset because she doesn't really like her dad or something like that. Like, she's really growing more cold because she's being forced to do this stuff with her dad that she doesn't want to do. That would explain why she so callously killed that deer without any reaction. But then when she's talking to her mom, you realize, oh, she seems really pissed at her dead mom for dying of cancer. It might not be what they were going for, but when you watch these scenes and she's like really mad at her figment of her imagination, dead mom, You know, it's like, it seems like you're just mad at her for dying of cancer. You're just mad at everyone. Her best friend comes to pick her up, and she's rude to him even. It's like, why are you guys even friends? You know, why is this guy who... I just want to clarify, there's only a couple people in this movie who are, like, genuinely awful in their roles. These two aren't awful, but their writing and their character development is just so weak that it makes you either annoyed or frustrated. Like, this guy is really simping over her. He gave her a promposal thing in her locker, and I don't know why, because she's so rude to him. She's so mean. There's no time where you're like, I see the charm in her. I see where you could maybe have a crush on her or something like that. It's just, she's kind of a bitch, but this guy likes her because... they've been friends for a long time. I've had a crush on you since I was little. You know that? To the point where when she denies him in the cafeteria and goes to use the restroom, someone tries to come up and sit with him like, hey, how's it going? He's like, get the fuck out of here. I'm waiting for my lady to return, you heathen. Back away. Like that shit? Like, what are you doing, my guy? Obviously that was an exaggeration, but that's essentially what he's doing. Like, I don't understand the character's motivation to like her, or this character's motivation to just be a bitch to everyone, which is her thing. There's at one point where I was thinking, are they about to draw a parallel with her characteristics and these school shooters? Because there's certain parts about her that kind of line up, you know, being rude to everyone, being emotionally distant and cold, shutting people out, murdering a deer without any reaction or any signs of remorse even. That seems like, you know, the beginning of, well, now that I've murdered this deer, time to murder some kids at my school. But they don't really emphasize that message. All they really did was, there was a part of the movie where I picked up on it and assumed that that was what they were gonna do, and they didn't. There's not even any emotional connection with, like, Thomas Jane, her father, you know, they have a scene early on, and I felt nothing. You know, he's the actor. Usually in certain bad movies that come out, there's one recognizable guy, and there's a lot of critics, even I've done this before too, I'm sure. You have them going like, well, the one recognizable guy in this movie was the best part, so D-. Not even the case with this one. Thomas Jane just looks bored out of his mind, if I'm being completely for real. There's a moment where he drives up and the parents are outside. It's not a lot of parents though, like it's like a handful of parents waiting outside of this building, and they don't look as concerned as they should be, and neither does Thomas Jane. It's like he pulls up and he's walking around like, huh, I'm mildly concerned about what's going on around me. It's like, these parents should be like screaming, horrified. I know that you're trying to just make like a fun action thriller, but realistically, this is how people would be reacting, and you not doing that is really incompetent. This movie isn't incompetently made, but there's certain incompetencies inside of this movie. Like, there's a stock sound effect. Like, it's usually preserved for like, part of the movie that's like a large crowd reaction, but it's mostly used for trailers, nowadays at least, because it sounds so awful and fake. I'm gonna try to find it on YouTube, but it's this sound effect. So they played that like crowd reaction sound effect, like, like that, on top of like one scene where it's just a small little classroom. This sound effect that's preserved for like a large audience. They play it in a like small little classroom that reacts by turning their head to a noise, but you can tell they've lowered the audio of this track so that it's not that noticeable. But I heard it. It stuck out like a sore thumb. I was like, there's no way. What are you doing? So there's certain things like that. Like at one point, like they drive a hole in the cafeteria, the cafeteria glass. There's like a big hole, but they put up some barricade stuff. But at one point, it seems like one of the school shooters just like goes up to the hole and like there's no barricade anymore and just starts spraying bullets at everyone outside for a bit. And it made me think, like, did they put a barricade back up? Did they even put a barricade up in the first place? What? Wait, where is there a patrol unit that's like coming around the perimeter that's gonna sneak in this hole and take these guys out? Because it seems like that should be that should be at least discussed right now. There's a cop character, but he's just there to be a cop character pretty much. Like he drives around and is like, huh, someone exploded a fertilizer bomb here. That's a little weird. Huh, this shed is on fire. Oh, there's a school shooting going on. I gotta go here now. And it's like, you're barely a character, you know? I don't know your name. I don't know why you're being emphasized this much because there's nothing to you. And this bugged me a bit. There's a couple, like, not so subtle jabs at the left, pretty much. Like, there's a couple lines of dialogue that had me cringing, you know, not just in general, like, lines of dialogue, but there's, like, certain specific lines of dialogue that are obviously there just to, like, push a button. But then there's also a moment where there's a reporter on the scene talking about the school shooting, and the cop comes up and is like, hey, can you stop pointing the camera there because they're watching the feed, you know? And the reporter is like, oh yeah, as soon as you find me another place to point my camera, you scum, we are the media. He might as well have gone into like an evil villain speech, because all of a sudden, you know, no reporter would do this, but all of a sudden he just turns really evil, like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm just trying to cover the school shooting. And if this is a disruption for you trying to save everyone in the school, then I don't really care. I need the ratings for my news channel, which means pointing the camera at the building. like, no reporter would actually do that. I know you're trying to be like, certain liberal media, you know, media is kind of the villain, but this is not, their approach to certain issues is just so stereotypical or black and white that it's unbearable. He holds up a mic at one point like, all right, you want to get on camera? Here's the mic. And you can see not only is it in the style of the CNN logo, but they replaced the C with an F. Like, oh, I'm sorry, are you trying to spell out fake news network like on your thing? Is that what you're literally implying? My guy. No. So let's talk about these school shooters. They're easily, I think, like the worst part about this movie, not just because they're school shooters, but because they're portrayed so horribly. But even in the way that they're portrayed unrealistic, there's nothing interesting about them besides that too. That they're treated unrealistic, but not for anything better. Like the main guy, he's the one who's like, he's basically talking like this throughout the movie. I'm in command of the scene. I'm the main bad guy. And there's a couple points where he's trying to preach about like some message he has, and it made me think, is there going to be like a big exposition dump at some point where he talks about his message, his plan? But really, ultimately, all it comes down to is, oh, I just wanted attention. I want views on my live stream. I just want people to see me. There's a lot more complexity when it comes to school shooters. Some people aren't even willing to unpack it all because they think they deserve nothing, which I can see. And honestly, yeah, that's totally fine. But if you are going to examine a school shooter, have them as like the main villain or a main character, anything, you should probably take those complexities and start unpacking them, because you do this shit and it just feels very flat. You know, the guy, like, his acting is horrible, I'm sorry. He's not menacing, he's just acting over the top. And the way they bust into the cafeteria, the entire school, it takes them forever to notice that a van drove up and crashed into the cafeteria and that there's gunshots. There's no kids that managed to sneak out before and are like running around spreading the news. No one outside the cafeteria doors at the time to hear it and then run over to like anywhere else and announce something. And then people, even though they have their phones out, they've been instructed to just live stream me. So none of them are trying to text their friends throughout the school like, hey, get the fuck out, there's a school shoot. It takes them forever, but that's a part of the plan. You know, he goes off at one point talking about like, you know, you see, the people in the office, they have to confirm that there's a shooting before they can call a lockdown. And I was like, is this part of like a bigger message that you have? And no, it was just, it's just so it can take forever for them to announce a lockdown or start doing something about these school shootings. It's just a plot device. A plot device that ultimately doesn't make sense and is unrealistic as fuck. There's one point where students are running around outside to these other classes that are still in session, banging on the windows, and you can hear them from inside the class and they're trying to get their attention. And the teacher's just like, oh, these frantic looking kids that are looking pretty scared, I better close the blinds because it's senior prank day, which is how they get away with other things too. Like at one point they go into the teacher's lounge for a fight scene, but there's a bunch of balloons there because of a prank previously mentioned before in the beginning of the movie. Or we're not going to take a lot of stuff seriously because seniors are trying to prank us. It's one of the, I've never had a senior prank day. Like I've never been to school and was like, oh, it's senior prank day, I can't wait for that like next year. Like I've never had that. I'm sure it's a thing, but I've never had that. So they're trying to play it up. And it's like, man, I don't think senior prank day is as big a deal as you guys think it is. But going back to that one part with the classroom when they're banging, as I said, you can hear them. Like from the inside of the room, you can hear them saying. I don't know why, as soon as that teacher closed the blinds, they were just like, well, better move on to the next class that won't believe us. Why wouldn't they just start yelling, there's a school shooting going on in the cafeteria. This is not a joke. Get the fuck out. They don't. They're just like, oh, they're not going to listen? Then to hell with them. You know, we'll go to another classroom. Ultimately, ultimately this is a movie that is trying to sensationalize a certain event, but the details of these events are so poorly thought out and just unrealistic as fuck. The thing is about school shooters is that they're mentally unstable. Like, they'll try to probably act cool or like say certain philosophical things, but it makes them creepy. Like, they look creepy as shit. Like, the main school shooter in this movie, the guy who orchestrated this, like I said, who's acting like this, commanding a scene, he doesn't seem mentally unstable, like, for a kid who is trying to now be cool but is coming across really weird and creepy. He's coming across weird for a movie villain. Like some adult who would, like, take over, like, an office building or something. And it's like, this is not how this works. Everyone take out your phones and open your apps with live stream capabilities. And it's like, why would you say it like that? As I said, there's certain lines of dialogue that people say that's either really cringy or unrealistic for kids like this to say. People acting in ways that they shouldn't and wouldn't in real life, but it's a paycheck, we gotta do it. He even has like a Harley Quinn-esque like girlfriend. Basically, I only say Harley Quinn because when she comes up, you know, they corner everyone into the cafeteria. She like does like a mini skip to him and they smooch in front of everyone. It's like, really? This is what you're doing? Like, that is so cliche. There's one who's hearing voices, man. So he's like starting to talk to people off screen and he's crazy. Even that is like movie-fied, you know? Like, every time he did it, I was like, just stop. Stop doing it. This is not... Ugh. But then there's one of the most infuriating parts of this movie is when there's one of them, like this bigger guy, like with long hair, he gets basically knocked out by the main character and handcuffed to a seat, and they start talking, and his whole thing is, I'm a school shooter because of one time when I was in front of assembly, everyone at this assembly, and some kids pulled my pants down and showed my dick to everyone, and after that I decided I'm not gonna be laughed at anymore, I'm a school shooter now. And it's like, you know, I can see that as a reason why someone would begin a downward spiral into a school shooter, but you gotta show the mindset, what people think after certain inciting incidents like this. If you're just gonna say, I felt kind of embarrassed that they pulled my pants down in front of everyone, it's like, that's a little too vague and basic. But don't worry, guys, because the main character gives him a stern talking to, like, what if all the people that you shot weren't laughing, and none of the people you shot were the ones who pulled your pants down? They didn't deserve to die, and you're a bad guy for that. People are gonna remember you for this bad thing. And he's like, yeah, okay, I guess I'll change my mind now. I'm not a school shooter, I feel kind of bad. And it's like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, giving a school shooter, like, a stern talking to... You know, if you have already shot people in a school and have already gotten this far, chances are someone telling you, hey, this is wrong, isn't gonna immediately change your mind. You know what I mean? It just leads to her letting him out, being like, you can redeem yourself, just so she can go to the cafeteria to save her boyfriend. And I was thinking there's gonna be a plan where the guy comes in and like does some damage, but really all he does is like he comes in and it's just like, put your guns down, this is over. And then he gets shot, and then the main chick just runs out with her dude. And it's like, did this girl have a plan when she let him out of his handcuffs? Or was it literally just, alright, I'm gonna let you out to help me, but I'm not gonna specify what you have to do or what we're gonna do. Just, I'm gonna go in and, I don't know, you follow me. Say this is up or something like that. It's so bad. This is one of those movies where the action I can't say is awful, like the way it's made. It's not completely terrible, but there's just nothing special about it, and I was constantly taken out of how insensitive everything they were doing was, so it makes it seem worse overall. And I guess I can't spoil it, but near the end of the movie, it's an abrupt ending. They don't focus on any consequences about what happened or any trauma that's lingering, or really, they don't really do a great job of resolving a whole lot. But ultimately, they call back to the deer in the opening scene, and I was like, oh, this is ultimately why that scene was there. It was all leading to this little speech she's giving now. Oy vey. Like, I feel like it was gonna be one of those things where they call back to the opening scene and you feel like things have changed, you know, like something has changed in the character, but really it just seems like she's the same, if not just gotten worse as a person. So overall, I hate this movie. There's not really a single thing about it that I liked. You know, every single character annoyed me, so there was no performance that I liked, no action that I liked. There was nothing about this movie that I cared about. And I'm just, overall, I know some people are gonna say, you're just really too sensitive, meh. But honestly, it was one of those things where I was like, this is really insensitive, and I don't want to say I'm offended, but I honestly support anyone who feels offended by this movie, because it is one of those things where they tried to sensationalize a tragic event, but ultimately, what's worst of all, they did nothing with it. Just make something that's very cookie cutter by the book. And ultimately, this is a movie that could have maybe been important for talking about school shootings, opening up a conversation about it, you know, talking about the before, what happens before and what happens afterwards, you know. It could have been one of those. But instead they were like, well, let's just do Die Hard in a school shooting. Let's use all of these things and make them cookie cutter and basic as fuck for a cliched action thriller that ultimately isn't even really that great. And for that, I have to give this my lowest grade because of that. I'm gonna give Run, Hide, Fight an F. Please don't watch this movie. I think you only can watch it if you subscribe to like the Daily Wire or something like that, which I am not. I might have watched this online overcast with someone else who may also not have subscribed to the Daily Wire to watch it. Maybe. Don't watch this movie. Don't give it any support at all. It does not deserve it. But if you've seen Run, Hide, Fight, leave in the comments below what you thought of it. And as always, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe. I'm Jackson Fulcher. See you guys next time.